can you tell us that? Is it possible to a country to transform itself to something, let's say, developed countries without using technology, without empowering its people? No. Is there any country where you can say that, hey, they blocked internet or they denied people access to the internet and technology, and they could be able to develop, especially in the 21st century where globalization is happening?
No, that's the thing. Now that the rest of the world is in touch with itself, and now that everyone is talking, now that all the businesses around the world can talk to one another, and I can have suppliers halfway around the world who make what I need at a cheaper price, and so I get it from them as opposed to getting it from some place that would be more expensive. So it's going to affect my business when I can be in touch with others in my area of business around the world. And so the world is already doing commerce now. And so if you're not, then you're being left behind. And so you see those that are doing this, they're raising their standards of living up. Their innovation, their wealth, and just their standard of living has been dramatically improved because of technology. And I'm going to say it's exclusively technology, because when you go back to that chart I showed you before about how knowledge has grown, knowledge grew at an exponential rate as soon as we made information globally available. First, it started with television and satellites, and then it went to the internet, and during that entire period, knowledge has gone up exponentially. And so it's just a question of, do you and your community, do you want to be a part of that not just a knowledge explosion, but all of the potential, all of the possibilities that exist because of knowledge? And so, no, your question about whether or not this is possible, yes, it's possible, but if you go back and look at the last few hundred years, you have some ages of enlightenment, Renaissance, and so forth, and yes, some enlightenment happened, and it was so little, and it was so slow. But now, as soon as technology is available, everything goes up exponentially. So you see, yes, we can do it without technology. It'll just take hundreds of years. Or you can do it with technology and you can have the information right now. We can start applying it to our lives, applying it to our businesses, and raising ourselves up. And that is what technology can do.
Yeah, if they don't change, if they think that we don't mind, we can slowly grow ourselves, at the end of the day, when people are frustrated, they're going to topple the government by force, because they're not giving the people a chance, especially the new generation. Think about it. They want to have access to the world. They want to interact with their generation around the world. And the government is blocking them from having this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. So they are pushing even people to go to the extra mile to have access to information and empower themselves. If they try to slow down things, I think at the end of the day, it reaches to the maximum, the peak, and people may reach to the point where they won't tolerate.
I have a business. It's a little shop. It's just very quaint, not all that flashy. And I'm not going to get with the world's pace or anything. I'm just going to do it my way. And I found that over time, those who were innovators, those who had larger, more global connections in their business areas, they were growing, and I was not. And my business had to close up because I was not competing on that same playing field. You can't go out onto a football field and play by some other game's rules. You're not going to win. And so we can do it slow. We can do it inefficiently. But we're going to be left behind. And so you see, the rest of the world is moving on. And unless we can plug into that, our little shop is going to close down too. And we're going to be still scraping for just for pennies. We're not going to be thriving because we have not gotten in step with what the world is doing. And I'm not saying we should do like everybody else, but I'm saying that from a business perspective, the world is doing business a certain way. If you don't do business that way, you probably are not going to be included in the conversation. And so therefore, you're not going to be able to take advantage of that profit, of that production, that yield that you would like to. So yes, this...
By the way, the paradox in Ethiopia is that when they got even some help from outside to expand their internet connection, they say, we don't want help. This happened in the early 2000. I don't know whether you heard about...
Who didn't want to help?
The government in Ethiopia. They don't want help.
They didn't want someone coming in to help them expand.
I can give you a good example.
Okay.
I don't know whether you heard about the Congressman Mickey Leland. He died in Ethiopia in a plane crash in 1989. And in honor of this congressman, the U.S. government wanted to give $15 million to increase internet connectivity in Africa. Since he died in Ethiopia, they said this project should be headquartered in Ethiopia. Now, the person who was part of the organizing committee, local organizing committee, told me that they went to ask the right person to allow them to open this project in Ethiopia. They said, this is a very huge project. We can't just make a decision. We have to consult the prime minister. They went and told him that there is $15 million fund that would help advance internet access. He said, tell them that I don't care about your $15 million.
Didn't accept
the project. It went off, to another country. So they got help, but they don't want. Here is a trick. This was $15 million, but in 2000, around 2000, they got a green light from World Bank and IMF that if they open up the telecom, they would get more money, more than $50 million.
Wow.
So in that case, they tricked, even misled the World Bank and IMF. What they did was they proclaimed a law saying that, hey, you guys, if you want to do business, we are privatizing. You can open your PLC and do business in the area of technology, ICT. And some of my friends, they believe that that was genuine. It was, posted on the country's magazine, which broadcasts this kind of proclamations called Nagarit Gazeta in Ethiopian local language. So people took the magazine, they went there and say, hey, I want to open a PLC and I want to provide internet services. They want to be internet service providers.
Okay, right.
And they were told that we didn't know about this law. The people who allow you to open your PLC. No, here is the proclamation. We didn't know about that. And finally, they figured out, and they told the guys that, hey, that was just for propaganda consumption. Think about it. These guys want to open. It has been now 15 years. The law is there. The proclamation is there. But the government didn't open. They only did it to mislead World Bank and IMF to get money.
Wow, that's unfortunate. But your viewers are getting the picture. And the picture is that that the best way to grow your businesses, to grow your communities, to increase the education of your kids, these things will be better facilitated with access to the internet and to technology. Now, with a government that's not cooperative, you're just going to have to do what everybody else has had to do when their government wasn't cooperative, and that is you're going to have to band together and you're going to have to find out what it is that's available, what's possible, and then make it known that you want it to be made available. And then what you do as a people with your government after that, of course, we'll find out. That's...
Yeah, the paradox is that now people should have got this kind of support from a government that claims is the leader of that people by providing technologies, by providing infrastructures and so on, because the government itself going to benefit out of that kind of investment.
Oh, of course.
Think about if they allow e-commerce in Ethiopia. If people sell their products, there are some encouraging laws in the United States that allow people from Ethiopia to export some of the products.
Right.
Now they're going to tax people,
right,
get revenue, and that revenue would have been used to advance the country's development, and that would have been their legacy. But they're not doing. There are some people. A friend of mine once told me that he met a business person. He sells laser jackets. And what he does is he invests lots of dollars to come up with brochures, color brochures, where he posts the laser jacket and so on. Mm-hmm. And he told him, why you spend this amount of money? Because you walking around during events giving brochures. One brochure maybe $5. Why you spend that amount of money? Because that person may not purchase from you. Why don't you just have an internet? Why don't you have just a website? Post your catalog on your website and send people your business card or send them email with the link, and people see the catalog. If they want it, they can order. Even he suggested him that, hey, I can develop the website for you. And he helped him develop the website, and he was very happy. What happened? He got lots of requests even from Arkansas, from Kentucky, from even rural areas for these jackets. Right. What happened? For him to, for example, to send them a laser jacket, he has to open a PLC, he has to get permission from banks, because, for example, in the US, if I want to sell a product, I can use PayPal. I have a bank account, I just link that with PayPal. I don't invest a lot of resources, I don't need to get permission and so on. As far as I have a legitimate bank account, they purchase, PayPal deposits the money, takes a very fraction of
for a service
fees
fee. Right.
For service fee. Right. But in Ethiopia, you couldn't do that because the banks are not allowed to work, for example, with international banks to have this kind of access for people to have e-commerce, to have transactions. Let's say if you got an order from, let's say, from Europe, if you are in Ethiopia, you have to go to the bank, open a credit, and then send the jacket, and the person maybe send you a check, and then you have to come to the bank. You see the process, yep. The cost. So you can't really do e-commerce in Ethiopia. Do you know what the reason why they don't allow people to have this kind of e-commerce? Because they say that we don't know how to tax people. So we don't allow them to have international access to have e-commerce. E-commerce will revolutionize your businesses. If you were able to sell your wares on the internet, it would revolutionize your business. Because you see, when you're doing business locally, you first of all are dependent on that local economy to support your business. And so whatever the state of that economy is, that's all the more it can support you. That's all you're going to get out of it. But when you're doing e-commerce, you now have customers from all over the world. You're talking about, so now you don't have those local limitations. Now it's anybody in the world. So e-commerce will revolutionize your business. And so I wholeheartedly agree that this is where you're trying to get to. You're trying to get that telephone connection. You're trying to get that Citrix server that you can connect to. You're trying to get e-commerce, a website, and a way for you to do e-commerce for your business, to sell your products. Those are the things that if you want to know how or you want to know what to do, there it is. Granted, you've got some really tough challenges. There's no doubt about that. That doesn't mean you can't do it. It just means we just have to be innovative, we have to be creative, we have to be persistent and committed. And if you'll do those things, technology will support what you're doing to an extent
that you've never dreamed of?
By the way, to advance e-commerce in Ethiopia, some international organizations, for example, the president of IMF, once he met him in Seattle for the World Trade Organization meeting, and he was trying to convince the late Prime Minister Meles Zenawi that he has to open up his country for e-commerce. And the Prime Minister's argument was that we can't compete with developed countries. We can't succeed. So if we open e-commerce, we will be defeated. We won't benefit. He tried to show him, even he gave him a very excellent example. Before that, the IMF, they rewarded the couple of technology guys, young technology guys, who opened an e-commerce called Ethio Gift. And this,
you told me about that.
Exactly. This e-commerce, the website is hosted somewhere in the developed countries.
Doesn't matter where.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. So people, for example, from diaspora, if they want, for example, to give a gift to their friends, their family members in Ethiopia, they can just go to that website, purchase that item, and pay the fee, and the people locally in Ethiopia provide the gift. Now, these people, the founders of this company, were called in Stockholm, and they were awarded, and they were celebrated. What happened? When they came back to Ethiopia, their internet connection was disconnected. Because the people thought in Ethiopia, they were...
So they couldn't do business.
That was the goal.
I mean, but that was right.
That was the goal, but that they didn't know how internet works. Because your website is somewhere in the developed country, on that server, you don't have any control. You can, because what they did was the people, locally, they just gave the password, the username and the password to someone in the developed countries. They logged into that server. They just looked to the orders and just told the guys in Ethiopia to deliver those gifts to the people. They keep on doing their business. The only thing they cut off
was just the local connection. Right.
People were unable to connect to the server.
But see, that right there, that's what I'm talking about. That kind of creativity, that kind of innovation where, okay, we have an obstacle. We can get around this obstacle. We either move it or we go around it, and they went around it.
Exactly.
I mean, that is just exactly. Wonderful.
So the argument of the Wolf, who was the president at that time, was that, look, these guys, they use the same technology that developed countries are using. These are technocrat guys, and they are doing business, benefiting, and doing well. So why don't you just open up the e-commerce? Because look, these are from Ethiopia. They just use the platform, the infrastructure, and the technology the developed countries are using, and they are succeeding.
And they're succeeding.
Competing.
Right.
So they tried to convince him. But what happened? When he returned from Ethiopia, it was published on, I think, Washington Post, the story. When they returned back home, when Meles Zenawi, when he returned back home, he ordered their business to be cut off, and they were accused of doing business illegally. Rather than taking that lesson, opening up the e-commerce, he persecuted the people who are doing that innovative things to bring business to Ethiopia.
But you see, that will only happen so many times before the people will no longer tolerate it. So yes, that's a shame. That's a bad example. It's a shame that it happened. But the fact you've told the story again means more people now know the story, and the more people that know those kinds of stories, the more they're going to do things that are going to prevent that from happening in the future. But I am inspired by the fact that they got cut off in Ethiopia, but yet their business still thrived without them. And that is what here in this country we have 1-800-Flowers. You order flowers. You can order flowers for your mom who's out 3,000 miles away on the other side of the country, and she'll get fresh flowers tomorrow. You ordered them today, they'll show up at her door tomorrow. See, we can't even do that locally. I mean, you can't. You can do it. You can do it real locally, but other than that, you can't even do that even in a region. So I mean, what the internet can do, what the technology and e-commerce can do, is just, it's staggering. So no, this is good.
Yeah, so now we have talked about the why to find out the root cause, and also we talked about the what's going on. We've been talking about some stories. Now let's talk about the how. How can Ethiopia catch up to the rest of the world in terms of using IT?
Oh, well, we've already covered it. I mean, you've got some obstacles with the government, but you need to continue to educate yourself on these topics. Keep asking questions. People like yourself who are able to connect your viewers to agencies around the world, entrepreneurs, technologists, companies that are willing, or groups that are willing to donate to countries that are developing, and so it's going to take the community to come together and establish the fact that e-commerce and technology is something that you want and that you need, and that it will benefit the country as a whole. If the people can continually be telling the government that it will benefit the people and the government. You see, in this country, we always want to raise taxes. Every time we've lowered taxes, the money coming into the treasury of the government goes up. Every time we lower taxes, the money coming into the treasury goes up. Why is that? Because we have more of our money to invest and to spend, and there's taxing going on all of that money. And so the government is actually getting more tax money by lowering taxes.
Exactly.
See, that doesn't make sense. And so the same thing is going to be true with technology. The government is going to benefit as commerce goes up and as the flow of revenue goes through the country. The government's going to get a certain percentage of that in taxes. And so they don't have to raise your taxes. More tax money is going to be coming in because we got more revenue.
Exactly. To do that, the suggestion, the how is that the government has to change its policies. When we talk about the how, the government has to make some changes, policy changes, because the law is already there. In 2000, around 2000, they proclaimed that law to privatize telecom. Why don't they activate that law, change their policies, invite investors in terms of providing more cell phones, not just cell phones, but internet-enabled cell phones, and also invite people in the diaspora. There are lots of technocrat people around the world, Ethiopians. They could be able to invite them. They could be able to make also some changes in terms of that. Yes, they should learn. They should invite consultants in terms of understanding how they can tax, for example, from e-commerce. By making this kind of changes, they could be able to help people get empowered and at the same time expand their e-commerce and get some taxes and put that tax money to develop the country.
It's great.
Yep. So what about the international community? Because I want to mention about the importance of the international community helping the government in Ethiopia. We could call it pressurizing, or we could call it putting preconditions or advising the government in Ethiopia, because they are giving money, loans. They couldn't be able to get the return unless the government performs, develops the country. So they are wasting their money. Right. They don't get back what they invest. So they should push the government, because the government, and it is lobbyists, they talk about the double-digit economic development in Ethiopia. No one asks them the 0.25% broadband access. Nobody asks them the 1.9, a very disappointing internet access rate. So they should put this kind of preconditions. Because, you know, when they give the money goes somewhere not for developing the country.
Well, that's a very good point, and I want to reiterate that if you're in the international community in a capacity where your foundation donates money for developing countries or for education and so forth, the Ethiopian government has certainly proven that it is not trustworthy from the standpoint of doing what it says it's going to do. Okay, so that's a given. So my suggestion is, and I've been part of organizations that do this, and that is finding an organization that you can channel that money through that will make sure that it's being spent on what it's intended for. So if you are donating $10 million for infrastructure development in Ethiopia, then to whatever extent that can be done outside the government's control, then you should be partnering with organizations that can facilitate that and that are trustworthy. Governments typically are not because, well, frankly, they're spending other people's money. And so when you're spending other people's money, you're not accountable. And that's kind of the way it is everywhere in the world to some degree or another. So it's just best if you partner with companies, with organizations, foundations that are specifically committed to making sure that the money that is being channeled for this type of work is being applied to this work and not being pulled off and being spent by government officials on pet projects and other things.
I want to conclude this discussion with a high note. I don't want to finish it, with sad story. So let's talk about the future. I have hope, and I believe that you have too, because things may change. The 21st century is going to be a wonderful century for people in Ethiopia and around the world. So this is our hope that the government opens up, or pressurized to open up, or the people circumvent and find a way to empower themselves and finally twist the hands of the government to allow policies and investment rules and regulations and so on, so that they may empower themselves using technology. I'm also very optimistic that there are technology enthusiasts in the world, around the world, who are pushing so that people in the world to have access, for example, for internet. Organizations like Google, they're trying their best so that people in the developing countries have access to the internet. So I want them to encourage them and also invest in countries like in Ethiopia and find a ways to help people have access to the internet.
Well, I have some really great news for you. If you look at that, go back and look at that chart that I showed you earlier, the one it was a timeline, went from 2003 to now, 12 years. 12 years. And in 12 years, let's say 10, in 10 years, everything has changed. I mean, everything has changed. And so the hope is that it is changing so rapidly, and the demand on everyone, government officials, businessmen and women, everyone, the demands are getting more intense, the pace is getting faster, and there is a lot of business to be done out there in the world. And so we now live in a global society. We no longer live in a regional society. We are in a global market. And so the fact that things have changed this dramatically in 10 years would say to me that things are going to change for you probably fairly soon. In other words, the momentum is there. The world is operating this way. And I would say that your government cannot continue to maintain this posture. And with pressure from you, then it will break down even quicker. But I would say that there's almost no chance that technology is not going to overtake us, because it already has. And now it's just a matter of how we're fitting into it. How are we going to get ourselves in sync with it? And so I think that you should be encouraged. You should be standing up. You should be looking around, taking notes, connecting yourself to organizations like AZ's and so forth. This is the hope, that we're going to come together and we're going to pool our resources, we're going to pool our knowledge, and then we're going to move forward to make ourselves better.
Martin, we had a very exciting discussion. Thank you very much on behalf of ISAT and our viewers. Thank you very much for coming.
It's my pleasure.
Dear our viewers, I hope that you gained so many insights, stories, and recommendations from this discussion. I encourage you, if you are watching this program, I encourage you to become pro-technology. Even if the government doesn't allow you to use technologies, find ways. If you are a community organization, find ways to empower your people to use technology and have access to internet. I also challenge policymakers in Ethiopia. What is your legacy in terms of technology? This is a globalized world. This is the 21st century. You can't keep your people in the dark forever. This is time to change your policies and leave legacy. You can really help your people to be empowered. If you have empowered people, they could be able to be innovative. They could be able to be inventors. They could be able to come up with some inventions, designs, and so on. They could be able to compete regionally and globally. And that helps you also to generate income through tax. And most importantly, if you have empowered people, you can transform the country from poverty into prosperity. Don't miss this chance, and help your country to transform into greatness. Until I see you next time, have a good time. Thank you very much for watching.